This is episode 46, amazingly, of Reinventing School. And this time we really are going to do a whole bunch of reinvention and probably begin by talking about what has already been reinvented, because we're certainly not the first to come up with a phrase like that. And two of the people who have been very much in a leadership role in this movement, or the beginnings of a movement, or at least thinking differently about school, are Blake Bowles and Ken Danford, whose names I have been hearing since the very first notion that we were going to do a series like this. So Steve Hargan and I have been talking about this, and we've managed to take an entire year to finally get to doing the episode that we thought we would do in the first two or three. So here we are. It's a lot to talk about. We have some students as well. We've got representation from different parts of the country. Blake, you and I kind of began to conceive of this episode. So why don't we begin by your explaining a bit about who you are and how you got into this and what it is that you do and why it's different from the way the rest of school works.
Sure, I'd love to. I had a pretty normal upbringing. I wanted to be a scientist, and in college, I realized that research science was probably not my calling, and so I thought maybe I'll be a high school science teacher. And as I was getting into education, I started reading books by former teachers that shed a very critical light on the field, and I ended up never becoming a teacher or becoming certified in that way. And I went straight into the alternative education space, working with unschoolers and homeschoolers and getting to know a lot of people in the alternative school world, and ended up starting a travel company that has let me take teenage homeschoolers and unschoolers all over the world, and written some books along the way.
When you talk about alternative schools, we've got in the United States, 70 million students or some number like that in K-12. Most of those people will never have heard of the term. What's an alternative school?
I think lots of people have heard alternative school, but it first makes you think of like a last resort school. It's where at-risk kids go. It's where kids who just can't succeed in the traditional system go. So it's a fairly negative stereotype. And so I'm thinking more of the types of, overwhelmingly private schools, whether they're for-profit or not-for-profit, that families are electing to go to because it seems like a better choice for their kids instead of a last resort.
Okay. Thank you. And Ken, give us a sense of, same question. What's the background? How'd you get to do whatever it is you're doing? And what is it that you're doing exactly? And you're muted, please.
I went to public school in Shaker Heights, Ohio, liked it, went to Amherst College, went to Brown University for teacher training, taught public school for 6 years, was enrolled in a doctorate to become an education reformer, and then decided that maybe schools couldn't be reformed in the way that I wanted them to be. I really wanted students to have a choice whether to be in my class or not. I was tired of teaching to a captive audience, and it was my duty to inspire them. And that reform really isn't on the agenda of public school reform. I couldn't be a superintendent and make school optional for the teens or the students in my system. And I learned about homeschooling for the first time at nearly age 30 through Grace Llewellyn's book, The Teenage Liberation Handbook. This is 1995. And I was flabbergasted to learn there's a whole subculture of humans who were growing up outside of schooling quite successfully, and decided I should quit my job with my pal who gave me that book, Joshua Hornick, and together we should start a program that supports teenagers in our community to leave school and embark on homeschooling.
Wow. Okay.
And recently I wrote a book, Learning is Natural, School is Optional, the North Star Approach to offering teens.
Learning is natural, school is optional. Got it. Okay.
Right. And it's a head start on life is the key phrase there, right?
And I want to talk a lot about, because both of you have written books, and I want to talk about why that's important in this space, the sharing of ideas and the sharing of doing things in a different way. Jojo, you are in North Carolina, right? Do I have that right?
Yeah.
So tell me about your life as give me your biography. Start out, be a little kid, and talk about how school kind of does and doesn't play a role in that.
Okay, so I didn't actually grow up in North Carolina. I started off in California. We just recently moved here. So, when I started off in school, preschool or kindergarten, it was a normal school. We had fun. We did everything normal schools did. I guess.
Are you in like Los Angeles, San Francisco, big city? Are you small city? Or are you in countryside?
So wait, North Carolina or California?
California.
Okay, in California, it was Mountain View, which is like the Bay Area. It's like near Google.
Silicon Valley, right?
Yeah, Silicon Valley.
Okay, keep going.
So like my mom worked at Google. I just got in the school called Stevenson. It was really cool. I think it was very hands-on. I think it could be pretty similar to homeschooling, besides the fact that it was school.
A lot of
Yeah.
kids?
It was like the average of like 25 kids in each class, I think.
Okay. And what grade are you in?
Currently?
Yeah.
I am in 5th grade, going on to 6th.
Okay, good. Well, congratulations. Cool. So Tova, tell us about you. You are someplace else.
Yes, I'm in Greenfield, Massachusetts, and
Which is the center roughly of Massachusetts?
it's Western Massachusetts.
Okay.
And so I grew up. My family was part of like the homeschooling community when I was really little. My 2 older siblings homeschooled for about, I think my brother started school in 5th grade and my sister in 3rd grade. For me, I was young enough when we started school that I didn't really get to homeschool. I started in 1st grade. And so I went to just traditional elementary school. I mean, it was fine. I never loved it, but I've always it was nice. I got to see my friends. And then I went to a public charter school for middle and high school. And it's a very small school, 36 kids in each grade. And it was an expeditionary learning school. So it was a lot of like going out into the community. And so we did like a lot of, we called it field work. We would go out and like just try and be like a part of the community. And I mean, I loved the school. It was great. But last year I decided to leave. So this is my first year kind of officially homeschooling. And so I'm at North Star right now, which is where Ken is.
2 phrases caught my ear. One is, I decided to leave. You're a kid. What grade are you in?
I am in 11th grade.
Okay, well, all right. You're not so much a kid, but still. But I decided to leave. Can you break that down a little bit?
Yeah. So I'd always thought about maybe homeschooling again, but I thought it would never work out because I didn't think my mom could really figure it out. And so I never really brought it up. But this past year, school has never been super easy for me. I've gotten great grades. It's been fun, but it was super stressful for me, the workload. I think particularly my school had a pretty heavy workload. So that was hard. And so I guess I kind of did just decide to. I was old enough that I'm pretty independent. And so I talked to my mom about it, and she thought that it was a good idea. And so I left. I mean, there wasn't much to it, I guess. She's really familiar with homeschooling because we've been a part of the community. So it wasn't a super new idea that was scary or anything. And so it was a pretty easy switch.
Okay. Thank you. Emma, where are you? And give us a bit of your story.
Yeah. So I live in Salt Lake City, Utah, which is where I've lived for about 11 years now. So I have been homeschooled, unschooled, self-directed learner, whatever title you want to call it, basically my whole life. I'd say my first experience with a sort of structured alternative education, there was a community here just of homeschool families, and it was called Forest School. And we would go out about weekly just into the woods and just learn biology and just about plants and just all that stuff. And it was just a great opportunity to build community and be with one another. That was probably my first structured experience an alternative education. My parents were a very big believer in, I guess, not the normal route. They saw public school as kind of a waste of time. So they were definitely not into that ever. So, yeah.
All right. So there's a few different themes are emerging here. And let me say first, and this is not meant in any negative way at all. You guys seem so normal. Like clearly this experience has produced people who like it. This is a different way of doing it, but it doesn't seem as though it hasn't had any negative impacts that I'm seeing here at all. It's delightful spending time with you. So, but you're the exceptions. The vast majority of people in the United States, and in fact in the world, go to a very structured school and do it K through 12, and some continue, and some, of course, drop out a little earlier. They're not making many of their own decisions. I'm not sure how inclined everybody is to make their own decisions. Like, I'm not sure that's a high on the level of like, here's what I really want to do. I want to make my own decisions about what's in my head. So the obvious question is, at some point, somebody decides what it is that's going to be in Jojo or Tova or Emma's head. At some point, somebody decided what would be in Blake and Ken's head too. So there's a list, we call it the curriculum. There's teachers who fight hard to stick with the curriculum. There's teachers who do all they can to resist the curriculum, lots of people in between. So how do you, and I'm asking the high level question here, not the tactical question, how do you decide what's important to know? And then we'll get into how we organize any notion of school or learning or education around that. But at some point you have to say, I want to learn this. So Emma, using your example, we're, I'm going to go out in the forest. Well, the day you're out in the forest, you're not learning multiplication tables, but you are learning about, so there was a decision made and you multiply that decision by how many times, and it really determines what that learning path looks like. So anybody grab that. I mean, just how do you determine what's important to learn, Blake? And then Jojo?
I think we all pretty much agree that basic literacy and numeracy, but I'm talking very basic, like you can add and subtract, you can read stuff, you can write, you can type. Like, that's important. And everyone needs to get that at some point somehow. But beyond that, and so maybe we're talking about the third grade level-ish, there doesn't need to be a standard curriculum. You can really let young people follow their interests, and by going down this path, and sometimes that path looks like a rabbit hole, then they gain these sort of meta level skills, learning how to learn, and then they can use those skills to apply to any future learning or problem solving or jumping through hoops that they need to do in their lives.
Sounds like a good theory. Jojo, is it a good practice?
Yeah, I definitely agree. You have to learn like the basics of what you need to know. Like you need to know this stuff. Otherwise you can't really do like everyone else. But I think it's important to travel the world, like learn about more of like the outside than like inside. And you also have to figure out like what your deepest passion is so you can spend time on that. That way you can work on doing that in your life instead of spending time on things you don't want to do. Like, you should be spending time on informative things that teach you more about the world and like who you are. So
all right, so what and let me throw this over to Emma. Give me a sense of what that path looks like for you. What do you want to fill your head with? And go back to second or third, go back a ways, right? So you're just beginning this journey. What interests you? What do you stay with? What do you kind of flit away from? What are you trying to avoid? What do you want to get closer to?
This question I think is interesting because I think it changes constantly. Like, what I want to learn and who I want to become just changes probably every day, especially as I'm getting older. But
good for you. It changes a few times for me every day. So
yeah. I think that a big part of my life is coming to realize that if I want something badly enough, for example, I really wanted to be like a librarian when I was younger because I just loved being around books. And so when I was younger, I would just read all the time. I was very good at writing, I just loved literacy. And obviously, I think that was definitely my main focus rather than obviously
But
you need basic math skills to exist.
But take it down to a more micro level. So, okay, you're interested in the library, interested in books. What specific things are interesting to you within that domain or within any other domain? You're in second grade. What's catching your attention? What are you spending your time doing? Or third grade?
I think I just loved curling up with a good book. You know, I think it's as simple as that. Just doing little things that you enjoy and making a career out of it.
So, Blake, you're in second grade. What's the bright, shiny objects that are catching your attention?
You know, I was well adapted to school at that age. I was interested in quite a bit of it. And so, you know, I don't feel like I'm anti-school, and people who are rabidly anti-school, I don't really
No, I'm not asking that question. I'm asking about you as a kid and what interested you.
Oh my gosh, a little bit of everything. I gravitated towards the sciences and math. I like the more technical stuff. Yeah.
All right. And that was a school subject. So what interested you in life with or without school?
Video games.
Okay, fair enough. All right. Any specific ones?
Oh, yes. Role-playing games, first-person shooters, all sorts of strategy games.
Fair enough. Okay, Tova.
For me, I think I also lean towards math and science. Those have always kind of been something that I love.
Those are such school subjects, though. What? I mean, you're a kid, so you're in second grade. You're not going, I want to do math and science. I don't believe you.
Yeah. Outside of school, I think my big thing was animals. Just anything to do with animals. It's what I want to do as a career at this point too. And so I think that was kind of my like one thing that I like. Any chance I could get, I would try and find an animal.
Every animal, any animal, particular kinds of animals?
Pretty much every animal. I haven't really found one that I don't like. So
okay. Do you want to hang out with them and touch them and play with them? Do you want to dissect them? Do you want to run after them? Do you want to watch them race? Like what would you like to? Okay, great. You're in second grade. There's an animal. Go.
I think really I just wanted to play with them, interact with them. I think they're just, I don't know. I mean, I think they're just such, like all animals to me are just such beautiful creatures. And pretty much as long as I can remember, anytime I see an animal, I want to hang out with it and play with it, and just kind of like be with it, interact.
That has not changed since you're in second grade.
No, it has not changed.
And it sounds like that's a career path that you may be pursuing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Because of school, outside of school, kind of because of school. Like how much did school have to do with developing that interest?
Not very much, I guess. I mean, we didn't really do much around that in school. And I think, you know, for me, it mainly came from, I grew up on a farm. And so I think that's a really big place that it came from. And I mean, I think I have a bit of an interest in like the scientific side of like animal research and stuff like that. And I think that came from school, and from like science and math. And I think that's kind of where school came in to this for me. But I think mainly it was outside of school. Okay.
And if you had gone to teacher, principal, school district, whatever, you know, whatever person or people control it and say, I'm really interested in animals. I want to spend I know I'll stay at the school, but I want to spend half my time on animals. Remote possibility, not going to happen. I can find 10 other kids who want to do the same thing. We'll all go together. Give me a sense of the construct.
Well, I mean, I think elementary school probably not going to happen. I think, I mean, I don't know. We did like trips and stuff like that, but I think other than that, they were pretty like strict about just kind of like, here's the curriculum. This is what you're going to do. And like your interests are for outside of school, like after school hours. I think middle and high school, I think they might have been a bit more flexible, but at the same time, they were still, I think their focus was mainly just the curriculum that they had laid out. And so it like interests outside of that, like until you got to like 11th and 12th grade, where you can kind of like start taking classes outside of the school. It was really just kind of like, this is our curriculum and kind of, this is what you're going to do.
Okay. Well, Ken, I'm looking at this from the point of view of I want school to be the best experience for 70 million people. If
Mhm.
Tova comes to me and I have some level of responsibility for the school and says, I want to, and lots of other kids in the school want to spend a lot more time on animals. We would like to have half the school be devoted to animals. We want animals in the hallways. We want animals in cages. We want animals outside of cages. We want to go visit animals. We want to have this. We want this to be the animal school. And that sounds like a pretty good idea to me. It certainly sounds like a very good idea, I would think, to Tova at that age. Yes. So how do we do that? You've learned a lot about how school works, and you have a pretty good perception, I think, of how school works in the traditional way and in the non-traditional way. Without answering in the alternative non-traditional way, how do we make Tova happy in a traditional school system? How do we get to serve her? Is it possible? Are there ways of doing it? And not just the occasional exemplar school. How do we make this into something that she wants to go to every day?
That's like a trick question, right?
No, it's not. It's really
okay. The best. All right. You create a magnet school, a school with an animal theme to it. So all the kids who are allergic to animals and don't want anything to do with animals don't have to be there, because you don't want to force Tova's animal interest on Giorgio or Emma or me or anybody else who doesn't care about animals and wants to go play baseball. Leave us other kids out of the animal thing.
Is there a goat that plays baseball or
that's clearly
something?
about animals for Tova. What's that?
Isn't there a goat that plays baseball or something? There's some animal. Anyway, go ahead.
You create Tova's school for all the kids who want the animal school, and you create some other schools that have, the computer games, the video, the photography or whatever, and or you just create some of those channels in all the schools, and you let kids choose their courses to do whatever they want while they're at school. And while you're at it, you make school not compulsory in the first place, and you create, what you really do? You create a wave of schools that are kind of like summer camps, and you make the school year like a year-round camp scenario, so that you have the summer is full of activities, camps, day programs, overnight programs, everything, right? And people can pick and choose to do things for the week, for the month, for overnight or day. And if you just made that whole system exist year-round, where people could pick and choose what to do and where to go, we'd win.
Yeah, it looks like Jojo is really excited about that idea. So lay that out for us. Why?
I don't know. I just really like the idea of having school that's summer, but it's still during the school year. I guess that's what it is for me most of the time. And you can really focus on your interests and do what you want to do. You could switch around every once in a while. It's every single day. That topic.
Would more kids, the obvious question is, would more kids be happier and or less miserable and or fewer mental health issues and all that if we did it that way? Or we would just create a whole nother bunch of problems?
Can I answer?
Yeah,
Howard,
please.
We know that kids have less mental health woes in the summertime and on the weekends, and that Sunday nights, and Monday mornings are the worst moments of the week, right?
Okay.
We can guess I don't even know it's a guess. I bet we could do a scientist. I bet, Blake, there's evidence, right? We know this. Of course it's true.
Blake, how do you take it apart and put it back together again for a large enough number of people? First, what does it look like? And second, how do we get there?
You're talking about large-scale reform?
Well, I'm talking about animal school. I'm talking about, I want to make Jojo and Tova happy, and I'm guessing Emma too.
Yeah, well, you don't burn it all down and viva la revolution. Look at what's already happening. There are micro schools. There are self-directed learning centers like North Star, which are not technically schools, but kind of clubs for homeschoolers to come together. Some groups of parents just find a really cool specialist to come and teach a small group of kids. This is already happening.
But not for most kids, right? Most kids.
No. So we got to turn the volume up on it. I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
There's lots of ways you could do that. There was a bipartisan idea a long time ago with school vouchers, public funding and private choices. That fell out of favor for a number of reasons, but something like that could be resurrected. And there could be ways that you could, because, right? If it's just private options, then most families can't afford to do it. School is subsidized kind of professional childcare, plus hopefully some education that's happening at the same time. That's an important function. Like the need for that's not going to go away. But if you can provide some sort of mechanism of funding that still allows really cool private type innovations to flourish, I think that this could go from a little microcosm into a majority experience.
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
So I conclude my book with a premise. My fondest dream is you keep the schools as they are, with the buildings, with the staff, with the materials, and you give everybody 6 free years at these schools, but you make it non-compulsory. You let the teachers, turn it more like community college there. They rename some of their classes with specific oddball titles and things like animals or big cats or whatever. And then kids get 6 free years. If they do the distribution requirements, they can get a diploma. If they only go to the big cats, they don't get a diploma. They're gonna have to sit for their GED when they're 16 or 17 or 18. 6 free years at this publicly sponsored local institution with all the resources, all the stuff that's currently school. If you do it old-fashioned way, you get the high school diploma. You do it the newfangled way, you sit for your GED, early community college, and off you run. That's what I think is the easiest way to open this up for everybody. And then you invoke again all the people who run after-school programs and summertime things, and you broaden out the offerings to young people.
So here's the problem with this. We're all interested in a lot of different things, and we change that, as Emma and I were talking about. So here's the thing I read this morning, and you'll see what happens, at least in my brain, that I think is not so different from yours. MGM Lion, right? The MGM Lion at the beginning of movies, it's got circle and the lion,
Colbert last night, yes.
Yeah. So, and MGM was bought by Amazon yesterday. Okay. So the lion, you're actually not hearing a lion when you're seeing that lion. Did anybody know that? You're hearing a tiger. The reason is the lion's growl just isn't really good. So they found a really grouchy tiger and they recorded the tiger, and that's what we've been hearing forever. It's actually an unhappy tiger. Okay. So of course that opens all sorts of possibilities. So this is me learning. It's like, I wonder how you record an angry tiger. Like, because you don't necessarily want to be, walking around with them with a boom microphone saying, do it again. We didn't quite get it right. There was a little buzz. A plane went over. Like, how do you do that? So or you just leave a mic, you attach a microphone to him and just let him walk around. Eventually he'll be unhappy. Do you starve him so he'll be like an unhappy tiger? So all these possibilities. Then you're thinking, well, what would be funny, right? So like, what other sounds could come out of that? So it's like, what else could we attach a microphone to? And then try to lip sync that to the lion. So now I'm if I'm recording animals anyway, what else could I do with those audio recordings? What other animation could I put together? And do I want it to be funny? Do I want it to be educational? But I think being funny is a good way for me to learn about the sounds animals make, because I really haven't thought much about the sounds animals make. So Tova, you care about animals a lot. Have you ever thought about the sounds animals make, and try to really what do their voices mean?
I guess not really. I think the farthest I've probably gone with that is with my cat, and just like the different meows that she makes. Mm-hmm. But other than that, I haven't really thought about the noises that animals make.
Right. So let's grab your cat and you interpret what the cat is saying, because you're in the room with the cat usually, right? So you can interpret the sound, but you have a little bit of visual cueing happening there too. Yeah. So if I were to blindfold you and play the sound, you may not know what this cat is saying. You may be getting it from the cat's body language or facial expression or something like that, right? But I could also try to fool you and use some other animal that's not your cat. And then maybe so I'm watching this crazy Leonard Bernstein, classical music conductor, who is connecting the ideas of grammar and syntax and semantics in words and language with the way music is constructed. And it's really kind of fascinating. So I'm thinking, well, could you do that with cats? Could you could you put together cat sentences? Could you put together cat paragraphs? And if that's insane, are there other things that make noises like that? And this is how I would spend my time, which is a little terrifying, and also maybe exactly what you guys have in mind. Blake.
What you're describing is self-directed learning. And I think there are answers to your questions on YouTube already. And I think this is why
that's too bad, but
well, I mean, partial answers maybe, then you can contribute to it. And I think there's a good reason that homeschooling really took off the same time the internet was taking off in the United States. And it's because we don't have to look to centralized authorities like teachers for these kinds of answers. And we can find these cool little niche communities of fellow MGM enthusiasts who want to discuss this one weird thing with you, which you could probably never have a good conversation about at a traditional school.
Okay, and that's good.
Because I'm thinking,
I mean, I build
like there's bad too, right?
Doing things that are crazy like that.
Yeah, yeah.
How?
Well, we've gone from information scarcity to information abundance, and yeah, there's like bad aspects, and people can get into these echo chambers. I think we all know this, but I mean, this is what we're dealing with, and to assume that all education has to be so centralized and standardized and so measured in the same way that we did it all throughout the 20th century. In the face of this new reality just seems ludicrous to me.
But do you really want me, the bright 10th grade audiovisual student, to be wasting taxpayer money playing around with animal sounds and stuff?
I do actually.
Now,
I do.
Okay. And do you want me to completely distract Tova, who had a perfectly good career heading towards the science of animals, and now I've got her making cartoons? Right. And then I'm grabbing Emma, like, Emma, you were involved with forest stuff. Do you want to play with us? Sure, you'll play with us, right?
No, Howard, you woefully overestimate your power to distract Tova and Emma. I am sure of it. They just look at me, smile, and go, "No, thank you, Ken. I'm too busy. I don't have time for you." You think you'd be able to distract them, but you would not be.
So Emma, what's the likelihood that I can distract you?
Honestly, I get distracted pretty easily, so it wouldn't be difficult, but
yeah. And actually, see, having a background as a television producer, we're actually trained to distract people. That's what we do. So here is that problem. Tova, how easy is it for me to distract you? And I'm actually going in a direction here.
I think you could probably distract me for a time. I think if the other thing is interesting to me, then I wouldn't be able to get distracted super easily, but you could definitely probably successfully distract me.
So Sesame Street, in its early research, had something called the distraction measurement or the distraction tool, where they would they'd had something else happening in the room while the kid was watching, and they wanted to see how much non-Sesame Street stuff they had to do to pull the kid's attention away from Sesame Street. So attention actually matters, right? Paying attention, but that goes with paying attention to things that matter. Question is, does it matter to you, to me, to somebody else? So I learn because it's fun. To me, that's like the highest level of like, oh, I'm having fun and I'm learning something. I'm good. That's all I really need to know. So if I'm not having fun, we can pretend that I'm learning it, but I'm not learning it. And I may be learning it sort of for a test, but I'm not going to remember it. And I'm certainly not going to associate it with anything else. Blake, is that the way everybody works?
Well, I was going to ask you that, Howard. Do you think that you're unique in that capacity, that you only really learn something when it's fun?
When I ask educators, traditional educators, their answer is you are very unique. When I talk to other people, particularly people who are in a even vaguely creative field, they're like, yeah, we're all like that.
I think that's very revealing.
What do you make of that?
Well, educators have, maybe a default model of human motivation, which is, there needs to be very heavy-handed motivation. And that leads to these difficult situations where you have to, be this mega entertaining teacher while also delivering a perfect curriculum, when really you could just stop trying so hard and let kids mostly do what they want to do, with some constraints, some scaffolding. Yes, it's not Lord of the Flies, but like such a more graceful solution exists. It's much more bottom up.
Ken, you've written a book, but you also have this Northfield thing. So explain how that part of your world has come about, what it is.
So when I learned that there was a culture of kids like Jojo and Emma living life without school, I couldn't believe it at first. And then it became like, oh my God, I want to help all the kids I was tormenting in school to be able to live like them. What do regular kids, and I say that, tongue in cheek, but school kids need to be able to opt out of school, especially if they have siblings who are still doing fine in school, parents who are school oriented people, right? And the answer is, you need a little clubhouse, you need a little community center program that's open during the day where kids can go with classes, with tutors, with advisors, a social space with 50, 60 kids, a gathering. It's not that complicated. You can take it from there, Howard. So that's what we did.
These are
Create it,
kids
and it
who
has
are
to be
in.
affordable, accessible, welcome everybody, turn nobody away for bad grades or not being able to afford the fee. And
So
for 25 years, we've taken every single kid who's wanted to try living without school at North Star.
Just for clarity, these are any kid, or these are kids who are involved in a homeschooling, microschool, or similar?
No. Any kid. We're mostly 70 to 80% of them are school kids who are miserable waking up, going to school every day, and their parents call me and I'm like, well, how about try living without school if your kid's so miserable? Without North Star, they would not leave school and would not embark on homeschooling.
So what happens in the building? There is a building, yes?
Yes, there's a building.
Okay.
It's like a senior center or an after-school clubhouse. It's open during the day. We have book groups and science and math and trips and socializing and checkers, and kids lie on the floor and they have their computers and their phones and their food, and they go together. They look at each other and go, hey, this is boring here. Let's go for a walk to the store and get some soda, poison ourselves. And then they can say, well, I have to leave. I got on the bus. I have to go to volunteer at the library or wherever. And they come and they go, and it's normal. It's regular life in a center.
Tova, you've seen such a thing.
Yeah, a bit. I joined this past year, so for me, it's been all online. But I've done a couple in-person things, and it's basically just community where you kind of get to know other people, and they have classes. I took a genetics class, and I was in a book club. But there's also we did actually just this morning, I went to a butterfly conservatory around here with North Star, where we just got to hang out in a room filled with butterflies for an hour.
What happened to school? How do you suddenly have this time and freedom?
I think just being able to create my own schedule really, I don't know. I think I felt super busy in school, and I didn't think that I would have time for anything else. But once you get out of the traditional school hours, you're able to just kind of fit things in where you want them to be. And you have so much more free time. I was taking more classes than I took during school, but I had so much more free time because I was able to kind of spread them out and fit them in where I thought they should be.
Ken, what's going on?
I want to jump in on Tova, if you don't mind, Howard.
Yeah.
Tova, you had a lot of North Star stuff. You had a once-a-week advisory. You had a one-on-one tutorial that we had together for history. But you also took 2 community college classes second semester. You had a part-time job, a certain number of hours a week. You got your driver's license this year. You had a really full, busy. You played ultimate frisbee with your old school's team because they still love you over there, right? You were super busy this year between North Star, community college, a job, driving, a sport, your family obligations. You really, right?
Yeah, no, it was insanely busy. And it was really funny to see because in the middle of the year, I was thinking I'm doing so much more than I did last year, but I was not stressed out. I was happy about everything that I was doing because I got to choose what I was doing. And I had a say in, I basically kind of ran my own schooling this year, which was amazing because I got to choose what I wanted to learn, which meant that I wanted to learn it. And so I wasn't stressed out. I had more free time in a way because I don't know, it didn't feel like a chore to go to classes. And so it felt like I wasn't as busy as I actually was.
So you have friends who are, you said you're going into 11th grade or coming out of 11th grade now?
Coming out of 11th grade.
So you have friends who are in 11th grade who are in school, who you were in school with, right? In traditional school. When you talk to them about this and say, yeah, you know what? I decided not to. I'm going to do this instead. Are they looking at you like, you're crazy? Or how do I do that? My parents won't let me. What's the culture around this among your group of friends or people you know?
I think within my group of friends, no one thought that it was really crazy. I think they were curious to see what I was going to do because none of them have ever tried anything like that. And so I don't think that they really knew how it was going to work. And I did, we talked about it a little bit, but it really wasn't much of a discussion. I was just kind of like, hey, I'm leaving school. And then it was like, okay, we'll hang out like around whenever we can. And watching them in school, like in the school that I used to be in, and they were so stressed out all the time. And like I would be in like group like chats or something with my friends who were all in this school, and they would be talking about like assignments and how they had like 2 essays due within like 1 week. And I've like sometimes I bring it up and I'm like, hey, have you ever thought about leaving school? But for most of them, it's like my parents won't let me, or I don't know how I would even start to do that. And so I think that it's just not something that a lot of people even think about as an option because they don't even know where to start.
So tell me how this is not dropping out and starting your life. Like, where's the line there between those two?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I guess I don't consider dropping out just because I'm continuing my education, just not in school. It's not like I've decided like, this is like as far as I want to go with like my education. And now I'm going to like start like looking into like jobs and kind of careers and things like that. It's more, I've decided that the way that traditional school like works just doesn't work for me. And that learning style isn't what I need. And so I'm continuing my education outside of school.
So I am finishing 10th grade. I'm just done with this. My uncle is a plumber. I start spending time with him and learning about that. And at the same time, I'm reading books about molecular biology. And I'm involved with the community. And I'm running a Boy Scout troop, whatever the pieces are. Technically, I'm a dropout. I may be a very well-intentioned dropout, but I'm a dropout, no?
I don't really know. I mean, I guess I'm not sure what the definition of a dropout is.
I guess that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, so I mean, like, I don't know. I have questioned before if I'm technically a dropout because I'm not in a traditional high school, but I don't consider myself a dropout. So I think that it's kind of person to person. I mean, I don't really know what the definition is.
Ken, what's the definition? Or Blake?
Oh, wait, I want to hear from Emma and JoJo first.
Please,
then I'll come
go
back.
ahead.
Let my head not explode.
Right.
Emma's a dropout. JoJo's a pre-dropout, an early dropout. Look at you, JoJo. You're ruined.
At such an early age, we've ruined your life.
Are you a dropout, JoJo? Are you an early pre-dropout? Got a head start in dropping out?
What do you mean by that, though? Like,
You quit school.
yeah, I did. It was like 2nd to 3rd grade, I guess. So I don't know.
You're doomed.
I'm not doomed.
Why not?
I've already done everything I wanted to, and I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to do it more.
And Emma, how old are you, Emma? I don't know. I've never met you, Emma. How old are you?
I'm 16.
Are you doomed too? Are you a dropout loser?
I mean, I guess if your definition of dropout is not attending public school, then I am indeed a dropout, but I would not consider myself a failure or like I'm in trouble in any way.
Definitely not.
So this is weird radical thinking, right? But let me take it a step further. Will you end up with a high school diploma?
Howard, what do you need a high school diploma for?
So the answer is no. Would that be a fair way of saying?
Homeschoolers can just fabricate high school diplomas for their own kids. Ken mentioned the GED. There's state level, equivalency exams for high school diplomas. But really, how much do you need a diploma? So
I don't know.
Sometimes you need it to get into college, but a lot of times you don't. Like other stuff is way more important. Homeschoolers or alternative school students still have to take, SATs or ACTs most of the time. And
except in 2021.
Yeah. I mean, things are changing. But like those, like taking community college classes like Tova is doing, like that matters a lot more than a high school diploma to a lot of colleges. And if we're talking about jobs, then sure, maybe you need a high school diploma to get your first job. Maybe you don't. What matters more is real life experience and job references. And so once you get that first one, or even when you spend some time volunteering at the butterfly place and you have a job reference, then boom, that can be a substitute for the diploma if you're just trying to get a job.
So here's a weird thing. So my background is in media, and a lot of the friends that I came up with in industry are in the media industry. So there was an ad for senior executive producer of Good Morning America. I'm like, that sounds like an interesting job. Maybe I know somebody who would fit for that. And I looked and it's like, the only thing you need is a BA. Now, interestingly, nobody talked about a high school diploma. That's not in the list, right? So maybe, I don't know, but no master's degree. No, doctorates would be unusual in that industry, but master's degrees, like you hear a lot about people getting master's degrees, but not for one of the top journalism executive jobs in the country. I thought that was weird. The response from friends on Facebook was, well, experience really shows the way. And I'm thinking there's got to be more to the story. There's no way that that job goes out without having a requirement for advanced education or advanced degree. So this is a kind of dropping out, but what we're saying is yes, but it's the benefits outweigh the negatives on this. Am I interpreting that the right way?
Let me take this. I do think that we need these sort of social indicators of general competency and intelligence. And for better or worse, that's what a bachelor's degree has become. It's for worse when it comes with a bunch of student debt. But I'd say if you're going to worry about either getting a bachelor's degree or getting a high school diploma, like definitely go for the bachelor's degree. Because like you said, no one cares about high school diplomas. Like people who talk about that kind of stuff after you finished it, like you don't want to hang out with those kind of people. It just doesn't matter. It's like somebody asking you what your SAT score is when you're 30 years old. It's like, why do you care? And so you don't even have to do the bachelor's degree. You could do other stuff that can, provide a similar signal to employers, to people who you want to work with. I think it's tough to get around college degrees often, and there's licensing requirements sometimes. So that's a bigger challenge. But like skipping on a high school diploma, like that's not a big deal.
Teaching a course, and I was an adjunct, but teaching a course at an Ivy League university, I decided to give everybody a break one week and said, let's just work on resumes and career plans. Please prepare a resume. And everybody had their GPA on the top. And I started laughing. I'm like, just the fact that you feel the need to tell me your GPA tells me you're probably not going to get hired by me.
Yes, you're a bit insecure.
It was like just a strange, but it was so much a part of the culture, right? So part of what you're describing is culture, right? Part of it is like, that's just the way we do it and everybody's comfortable with it. But Jojo, you can't be alone in this. Do you know other people who are doing what you're doing? And remind us how old you are.
I am 11 years old.
Right. So you're sixth grade-ish?
Well, after the summer, yeah.
Okay. All right. So do you know other people who are roughly your age or younger who are, dropouts?
I actually do know quite a few because I take a lot of homeschooling classes. So, yeah.
And is this, you grew up in Silicon Valley. So that's a kind of a different culture, right?
Yeah.
A lot of really smart people. And you said you have family members who work for Google. So you're in a class of people that's different from a lot of the people in the United States. What do you want to do when you grow up?
Even from a young age, I've always been creative, mess. I will do anything creative. I always started off loving to draw. And then I started writing a lot of stories, and I'm also really interested in acting and singing. So not really going for the smart side, more of the spontaneous, let's do it.
Right. Okay. Emma, how about you? What do you want to do?
The same as Jojo, honestly. Yeah. At this point in my life, just traveling, just experiencing life and just doing whatever I feel like, I guess.
Is this something that, you guys are pretty smart. You're pretty well connected to what you're interested in. Let's assume that you're reasonably emotionally stable, in part because you're not doing the traditional school thing. Can everybody do that? Is this something that is a specialized thing that you guys have stumbled into? Or Ken, is this something that really ought to be available to everybody? And if so, why?
Everybody can do it. Almost everybody needs a little non-family support. In my my not so humble opinion of running a community center for 25 years, most people need a little community center and can't, especially as teenagers. Not every parent is available to be part of a homeschooling co-op or to be, kids need non-parental adults. We need communities. We need stable places where we know are going to be open for a number of years. We need places. So we need, but other than that, it's like you're asking again, can people handle the summer? Can people handle the weekends? Shouldn't we make school 24/7 every day? How do people handle free time without being told what to do? I'm making fun of you, but that's how you sound to me. So look, anybody can deal with one. Of course they can, but people need some resources. People need some support. People need allies. Of course they need. You can't do it alone. Almost nobody can or would want to. So, but yes, this is for everybody. Simple.
All ages?
Yes. How about you? How about people who are retired? Do you think we should make all retired people have curricula? You're 62 years old and you don't have to go to work anymore. We better give you a curriculum. Have you read the newspaper yet today? Have you exercised? How was your diet today? I mean, we're going to have state mandated required curricula for 60-year-olds? Get out of here. Yes, all ages.
So does that mean that you have people of all ages who are hanging out in your building and interacting with Tova?
No.
Why not?
We're about 12 to 18, 12 to 19. And that's just for cultural, but visionary wise, you're asking me a visionary question. The answer is yes, it should be for people of all ages.
Yeah, but when I get to the practical question, the answer is no. I wasn't expecting it to be no.
But Ken, you do have college students hanging out, and you do have
we
other
have college students who are tutors, paid work study students at North Star. Sure.
Toba, do you think there's any benefit in hanging out with people who are 3 times your age? Or 4?
Yeah. I think so. I think there's a benefit in hanging out with people who are, I guess, every age. I think that age doesn't, I guess, for me, factor in so much into education and things like that, because I think that I might be interested in the exact same thing that someone who's 14 or 12 is interested in. And in a traditional school, we would be in different classes learning completely different things. But at a place like North Star, I'm taking classes with people who are that age, and we're learning the same thing because it's what we're interested in. And so age isn't really something that factors into that.
Jojo, same question. You okay if the person sitting next to you is 72 years old?
I really don't care. I love spending time with people older than me and younger than me. I feel it's best to have a lot of variety. Because when I was in school, it was always stick to your age group. Recess, we'd have different times for certain age groups. There'd be the older grades and there'd be younger grades, and I'd have to be with the younger kids. I want to hang out with the older kids. Why not? It's always you have to stick to your pace. So once I started homeschooling and I started taking all these theater classes, I got to spend time with an 18-year-old, and I was actually that's a really amazing experience that everyone's experienced from a young age, because once you become an adult, there's no more grades. You're not spending time with people your age. So it's best to get that in your head from a young age. So,
Blake, what do you make of all this? And then I'll run over to Emma.
I think they are all spot on. I am clapping for them here. Yeah. Ask me another question, Howard.
Well, let me jump over to Emma first, because you look like you were going to say something.
I was just going to say that I would much rather hang out with someone who has the same interests as me, no matter their age, rather than just speak to someone who is my age purely because we're the same age.
I do that all the time. Yeah. To me, that it just makes so much more sense to organize your life that way and find people who are, because a lot of things we're interested in are fairly specific. So it's oh, I found somebody else who actually cares about this as much as I do. That's great. So yeah, this does make a lot of sense. But here's 6 of us who are all agreeing this makes a lot of sense. And I know that there's a circle of people that's larger, but most people don't have this in their life. And I was going to say, and don't agree, but I don't know that I can go that far. because I think that when you present, so why are we not doing this all over the place? Ken, why don't you have a franchise next to every McDonald's, and just have one of a North Star, right? In every place in the country.
Well, we do have a network called Liberated Learners. There's a dozen around the world, including one in Manila. If you go to Manila, there's kids who are dropping out because of me and my allies in Manila, the Philippines. But why is everybody not? You're right. People don't agree. This is not a vision that a lot of people have for themselves or their children. Most kids, my own children in this house they're grown ups now. They're in their 20s. They're done with college, but they didn't choose North Star or homeschooling. They both chose school. Not everybody wants them. A lot of North Star kids have brothers and sisters who choose school. So not everybody wants what we're selling. It's like asking, why isn't everybody vegan or vegetarian? Why isn't everybody choosing some countercultural lifestyle that's clearly healthy and good in its own way? It's okay. So my life, my 25 years has been one family at a time, one kid at a time. I'm helping them cross this bridge. And then, there's other ways I'm trying to help more than one at a time, but locally speaking, that's what I'm doing. And I find that as redeeming as any other way to live my life.
Now, Blake, your take on this and the way that you work with kids is a little different from a physical facility. Give us a sense of how you pursue this.
Well, I thought about becoming a teacher, alternative school teacher, starting my own school. But once I got a taste for the power and potential of this homeschooling community, and specifically, I'm most interested in the unschooling part of the homeschooling world.
And what does that mean? What does that term mean?
To me, it means it's full-time self-directed learning. And so there's a lot of homeschooling varieties out there. Some people call themselves eclectic homeschoolers, which means like some parent-driven stuff, like you got to do math and foreign language and English, but the rest of the day is up to you. And unschoolers, typically it's more like the whole day is up to you. And I find that the most interesting kind of sub-community to work with. So once I got to know a lot of these homeschoolers and unschoolers, and I enjoy working with teenagers the most, I realized that they can pretty much do everything they need to do on their own. Like they don't need me to necessarily start a school. They don't need me for much. So I've ended up playing a role that actually they do need me for. Like I take groups of teenagers on international trips, and I'm doing something that a parent can't easily do. And actually, as Ken mentioned, being a non-parental adult has its own special power, like being a sports coach, for example, or being a teacher in a traditional school when you don't have to put on your teacher hat and you can just be a human being with the student. So that's how I've ended up doing it. It's like the point of all this self-directed education should be for us adults to teach ourselves out of our jobs, right? But there's not much money to be made in doing that.
Now, there are several books you've written, right? So give us a sense of the kinds of ideas that you want to convey and the reasons why you're writing these books, right?
Sure. Yeah. The first book was College Without High School. And that's just about how you go to college if you don't go to high school. Because most people think, okay, that's an impenetrable barrier right there. And I said, no, it's not. I wrote one about what you can do if you choose not to go to college, how you can still have like a successful, interesting life, because lots of young people do that. And my most recent one is called Why Are You Still Sending Your Kids to School? And this highlights, I think, Tova, something that you said, like a lot of parents, just like your friends' parents, for example, just like don't even think that this is a realistic option. And so I'm trying to like put the burden of proof actually on parents who think like you have to go to school because there's no better choice or no other responsible choice. And I'm saying, no, actually, there's so many great choices and options out there. Something like North Star being one, homeschooling, unschooling being something else. Like they're just blossoming. If your kid is not happy in school, like you should know about the alternatives, and that the book, helps educate them on the alternatives. And like keeping your kid in traditional school just because it's traditional school and they're kind of miserable each day, like no, that should no longer be the default.
So thank you, Ken. One book, several. You held a book up at the beginning. You want to grab that again? All right. So is this the only book, or have there been several books?
That's the only book.
Okay. So give us a sense of what you're thinking. What are the kinds of ideas that you're trying to communicate through the book?
How I've come to understand that school is optional. You can go to school if you want to. Don't go to school if you don't want to. The path is quite well trod if you don't go to school. There's lots of stories, and then how I have chosen and then found allies with me to work to help make this choice available to more local kids who would otherwise not be able to choose it. The alumni outcomes, how it's been going for, our first students at North Star from 1996, they're like 42 years old. There's like parents. We have second generation kids at North Star now. There's no impediment. There's, not going to regular high school. Nobody cares. No one's been disqualified from anything because of your so-called, we avoid the term dropping out because it's only funny here with you. It's not funny
right,
out in the
I
world.
understand.
And so we don't call them dropouts. We talk about living without school or choosing to stop going to school, or, what Tova said at the beginning of this conversation is more of our vernacular. So, I'm only laughing with you in this context. I don't think it's helpful to use the word dropout elsewhere, but no one's hindered by choosing to live without school. The high school diploma isn't worth the paper it's printed on. So, if you can have a story to tell about what you've done instead, if you do some community college classes and you want to go to a 4-year school, you end up 2 years ahead of yourself, saving, $40,000-$50,000 a year. It's all a win. But that's the story. It's like, look, there is a whole culture out here. Most people need some support to do it. This is our version of it at North Star. And we'd love to share it with everybody who wants to. And then I finish with this grand idea that the best solution to it would be to keep the schools as they are and just make it all optional. And if you do it the school way, you get their diploma. If you don't do it their way, you had your nice opportunities there, and you go get your GED for anything formal that you need that ticket for, and off you trot.
See, and as I listen to this, I'm thinking largely what you're describing is a K through 12 experience, 5 through 18, 5 through 25, something like that, right?
Right.
But friends keep looking at me going, you're like still sort of in school. You're kind of like a forever graduate student or something. Like you just keep on finding these areas that interest you, and you find friends who want to play with you. And now let's do this. And all of a sudden we're doing this project or that project, or I want to make sure that I read a biography of every single US president because it's an interesting view of US history. So I'm, trying to get other people to do it with me. But at the same time, it's like, you know what? I'm really interested in the way that the Dalai Lama looks at molecular biology. And that's like a whole nother, and then there's a thing over there and a thing over there. And I love doing this and don't stop. So I don't know that I'm different from the way that I was. You were asking before, Blake, about whether that's unique. I think that we're all doing this and need to be encouraged to do it more and more and more. And you guys are so much better positioned to do that because your muscles are already being exercised in those ways. You don't really feel that you need the school. You got enough in yourself. You know where you want to go. You're going to find sources for it. You're going to be engaged in activities, and you're going to just do it. Are you thinking this is something that you're doing instead of school, or is this something, and I guess I'm asking the students, or do you think you're doing this because this is the way humans learn and you're a human, therefore you're going to keep learning this way, and it goes way beyond anything like age 25? Like, do you think you're just doing this as a replacement, or do you think you're doing this as more of a life decision that lasts a long time? Any ideas? Yeah, Jojo.
I think it's definitely not a replacement. And I guess it doesn't have to be a life decision because at any point in time you could decide, oh, maybe I want to go back to school to try it again. It lands somewhere in between. It's probably something every kid should experience at least like 1 year or something, like a year of independence of like no structure to see what happens. Like it doesn't have to be permanent. It just, you should experience it. It's amazing.
Okay, Emma?
I think Jojo put it perfectly. Yeah, I think that in some ways it's a life decision because I think that everyone is a self-directed learner, even after, you get a master's, college, high school, diploma, whatever. I think you are always learning and pursuing things that you want to do. So I think in that sense, it could be a life decision, but yeah, also it doesn't have to be a lifelong decision. I think with this type of education, there just comes so much freedom, which is what I love so much about it. And you can just always change it or just always form it in a kind of way that suits you best.
It's flexible, it's malleable. The whole of it, not what you learn is malleable. It's not something that, okay, I learned it, checkbox, done, finish that course. You're not thinking that way at all, are you? Yeah. Tova.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's much to add. I think that they both said it really well, that it can kind of change whenever. And it's, I mean, the whole point is that it can change when you want it to, because you've decided that this isn't what you want anymore. And so you're going to do something else. And so I think that's kind of like the whole point.
But Blake, I have this piece of paper. It says, you know, mechanical engineering, and it's got a fancy title, and they write it in really cool script and stuff. And it cost me a lot of money. So once I've learned it, I can go be a mechanical engineer. Why is what? Like, we're talking about a very different way of thinking about ourselves as humans here.
No, I don't think we are. And listen, I want my mechanical engineers, whoever is building my bridges or buildings, to have some really good training. You know, I don't want a completely unschooled surgeon to work on me when I need help in the hospital. And I think we all sort of agree upon that, because we need standards of competency. And we need them more in some areas and less in others. But I wanted to piggyback on what Jojo said about, like, everyone should experience this for a year. Ken actually wrote a really awesome blog post long ago called 8th Grade Out. And he said, like, if you want to try taking a year away from school, consider 8th grade before you get into the sort of meat grinder of high school, when it becomes a little bit more difficult to go in and out. Like, take 8th grade and go travel, volunteer, do some work, hang out with some extended family, like, be a self-directed learner, be an unschooler. You can try it out. If you don't like it, fine, go back to high school. Like, it was probably not really affected you. Maybe you got to catch up on math a little bit over the summer. And if you like it, then boom, you are opening the doors to lives like Emma's and Tova's and Jojo's.
I'm a kid. I'm in 8th grade. I'm 13 years old, 14 years old, something like that. I go to my parents saying, listen, it's been great. I'm going to just spend a year away. Does that happen?
With me, it does. In my world, yes, it happens all the time.
It does.
Absolutely. With
I mean,
North Star, I mean,
great.
Not alone, but yes.
Okay. Most people, many people, or few people?
A few every year. I got kids at North Star this year who are going to go back to high school next year. They were out for 6th, 7th, or 8th grade, and they want to go to the charter school or the high school.
Yeah.
You know, they use North Star for a year or two at that early adolescent age. And it's a joy. It's fine. It's a total joy.
Fascinating.
Can I back up on
Please, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'll go back to your mechanical engineering diploma. Look, we're not talking about college diplomas. We're talking about high school diplomas. There are loads of kids at MIT getting mechanical engineering diplomas like yours who homeschooled. I hope you can appreciate that the college diploma has absolutely nothing to do with a high school diploma. There are homeschooler, independent kids like Jojo who goof around, drop out of kindergarten, never go to school, go to MIT and get their mechanical engineering diplomas by the hundreds, by the thousands for the past 40 years of the modern homeschooling movement. This is not complicated. So we're talking about apples and oranges here. You're conflating things. You unconflate them.
What's great about this is it's much more flexible. It's something that you can go in and out of. It isn't tied to a specific piece of paper. It's a way of doing this for your life or not, depending upon what you want to do. You have a lot more control over this. So in some ways, you want the students to know about this, but in more, you really want to expose the parents to this, right? Because it's the parents are going to be the ones who provide the resistance, I would think. And also they tend to be the more vocal members of the community. How do you educate them? Where's the movie?
Well, we're going to split up on this one. Blake, you go first. You go first or me?
I'll go first. First of all, there are some movies, Class Dismissed, and then what's Jeremy Stewart's second movie called?
Self-Taught.
Self-Taught. So there are some documentaries out there. But I just want to comment that among the parents I have noticed who are choosing the very self-directed paths, there are some patterns. I see a lot of moms who are former teachers, educators, some who are current educators and choosing to homeschool instead of sending their kids to school. And then I've seen a lot of dads, and I'm just painting with a very broad brush here, who are in like the tech fields, for example. Jojo's mom is in Google, so it's a little bit flipped here.
No longer in Google, but yeah.
Oh, well, so she was there once because tech is one of those fields where competency and creativity, if you can just demonstrate that, if you can build some cool app, if you can contribute to a team, then like that matters so much more than a degree, even a great computer science degree. Like that's a little bit stale by the time you've finished your degree. Yeah. And so I think a lot of this change is already happening for parents just by virtue of changes in the economy, parents getting more of a view into the troubles of the school system. That might be a hidden benefit of the pandemic and all of the remote schooling that had to happen, is that more parents got to see what was going on in the classrooms. And so maybe that will lead to some more permanent increases in the number of homeschoolers. Let's see. Whether you can force this upon parents, I'm very doubtful about that, but I don't worry that it's going to not continue happening either.
But I think two things just quick. One, I think that a lot more kids were exposed to the idea of having control over their own time and pursuing their own interests in this last year. And number two, I think parents became a little bit more aware of you don't actually have to spend every day in school. Like I think both of those were like, oh, it might not have to work that way. Just we'll return to a lot of it, but not all of it can.
I think you'd be surprised at the number of kids who are the ones who don't want this, whose parents I can, do want it. At least, I often see parents who say, wow, this sounds like a much better way for you to live. You're always so miserable and complaining. Let's just not go to school then. Wow, this is cool. And the kid is like, no way, I'm staying in school.
Okay.
I'm being a normal kid, and also it's kind of like self-employment where some people just find it burdensome and unsettling and too much, and you don't know when to stop. And there's kids who are just like, can I just go to school again, please? This is way too hard. Jojo's got the hand up.
Yeah, Jojo.
Yeah, I agree with what you just said. It's like I have so many friends who still go to school. I constantly ask them if they actually like being normal and blended in. And like every single time they're like, yeah, I actually enjoy being normal. And I'm like, what makes you normal though? Like, why do you enjoy it so much? This could actually help you do what you want to do. Do you want to do this? And like every single time it's like, I don't really like school, but I think I'm learning what I want to learn about. And I just have to it confuses me a lot. Like, are they just lying to themselves? Do they not realize it? Or do they really want this kind of life that's not actually very fun or enjoyable? It's like.
Yeah. So for me, just to wrap this up, I learned a lot. Let's start there, because the pieces of this that I've read about or talked to people about, seeing it come to life and actually understanding it through the lens of people who are actually living it really made a difference for me today. So I'm really grateful to all of you for making this much more clear to me and hopefully the people who are watching. So I'm really glad we did this. I don't know whether you guys learned anything at all or whether you're just kind of saying, well, this is my life and, I'm happy to talk to you about it. But this is just a real wonderful process of discovery, not only this episode, but many of them, but in particular this episode. So I'm really grateful. Thank you all very much. Anybody have anything else that they want to make sure that they say before we shut it out? I think we did good. We're going to roll the credits. Hang on for a second, because we usually just gather for a couple of minutes afterwards going, what did we do? So credits roll now. Thanks, everybody. See you next time. For on-demand episodes and more, visit our website. Kids on Earth contains hundreds of video interviews with students from around the world. Learning Revolution is a global collaboration network for people who care about learning. Be sure to join us next Thursday for a new episode of Reinventing School. Thanks for watching.